We're live now. Okay.
Yes.
You know, when you're always like, are we live? Are we not live?
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. I have my friend Alicia, my future doctor friend, with a great shirt today. What does your shirt say?
Malcolm, Harriet, Martin, Maya, and Frederick.
Okay. I just put up
Yes.
my Kendrick print the other
Love
day.
it. Oh my goodness, I love it.
I'll just send you one of these. These are
Please, and I was going to ask you to, but I didn't want to ask you to. You
no,
offered.
I'll send you one of these. It's my Kendrick, because it's an anniversary. We're coming up. We came up on a year or whatever.
Yes,
So
it's been a
you want
year.
to tell everybody who you are, what you do, for the people who are not familiar with you, which is an unfortunate experience for them, but
I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. I'm like,
oh, this love. I love it. So yeah, my name is Alicia Oglesby. I'm the Associate Director of College Counseling at a private independent school in Pittsburgh. And so that's my all day, every day, full time. I also am a PhD student at the University of Pittsburgh. So that's also a great experience. Yes, I'm very, very excited to be pursuing a doctoral degree.
What is it like, actually? And I'm throwing this on you live, but what's it like pursuing a degree at this time of anti-intellectualism?
So I think it's twofold for me. On the one hand, it's really nerve-wracking to see the impact that it has on the institution and on students in my classes. We're having conversations about what's happening every week in class and what it means for us as doctoral students, what it means for students to be able to stay in this country and study. So it has a huge impact, a huge negative impact, I think. But on the other side, I also think that it sort of pushes us in a weird way, to lean even more heavy into our scholarship and to say, okay, so we're essentially being further marginalized. This work is even more important, So I think that is, I hate that it happens in this way, but I do think that it is in some ways giving us sort of a little bit extra fuel to say, okay, well, now I'm really going to show you what I'm capable of and what is important for folks to know about.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, for me, a sign where it's like we're on the right track if we're getting this much resistance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I sent you, this is the initial bracket that I sent you, and you were the first and only person to be like, hey, NYU's on there twice. And I was like, multiple people have seen this. Nobody was going to mention this. But this was your initial bracket. And I think I asked a question that I found to be interesting, which was like, if I replace NYU, and in my head, this was like a very easy replacement. Is this going to change your bracket? And I gave you, I forgot what options I gave you. I think, no, never mind. I remember now because it's right here. Remove the. I gave you these options. So Boston College, University of Miami, Wisconsin-Madison, Pittsburgh, which is where, home, Urbana-Champaign, Clemson, Miami, and Pepperdine. And you said, and this shocked me, Madison would change a lot for me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put up your initial bracket. Let's start with this one.
Okay.
And these 8 of our first 4, right? Because I looked back at the tournament. Which ones do you feel like are ones that take care of your students the best?
Yeah. So I would say, I would definitely say, University of Pittsburgh, I think, is an absolute add on our students' lists. For multiple reasons. I think it's a phenomenal institution in terms of supporting students and balancing, kind of a fun, lively, spirited, traditional college experience, but
right.
also having pretty high standards for the students who graduate from here. And I think that they do a great job of reading our students and really making good decisions on behalf of the students who are here. That being said, yeah, I think our students. So I have many different factors that sort of were swirling in my mind as I was looking at this because for Illinois, I really do not like the process for counselors to help and support students in their applications. I think that they create barriers, unnecessary barriers for counselors to be able to support students, and that really stands in the way. As an institution, I think they're phenomenal, and they produce, even some of the professors at Pitt have gone through that program and are really phenomenal educators.
And are you aware they produced the first Black female billionaire?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Sheila Johnson.
I know Sheila Johnson. Yes.
I know her. Yeah, so but it's interesting because as a consultant, I'm not as impacted by the process because I don't have the same load where it's like whatever issues I have on a one-to-one basis, I can usually resolve, as opposed to you having 10, 20, 30 students that have to walk through the process. So
and I get it, but I think, ultimately their process is designated and designed for Illinois residents, which is it's fine for them. It's not fine for us. So that impacts things. I think Boston College does a pretty decent job. None of the rest of the schools really on this list stand out to me as schools that really go above and beyond for students at any point in the process. But I thought that Wisconsin-Madison, there's a number of students in my current program from that institution. I've had a number of students enroll. I've, been through their admissions process a number of times, and I just think that they do a fantastic job throughout every step. And I've been really impressed by some of the students that have graduated from University of Wisconsin. And they stand out in my mind as an institution where I would have students look. And I generally don't suggest schools that are a little bit more on the selective end, but I would suggest them.
So for me, and I'm going to put up your your first bracket, and then I'll put up your updated bracket. Okay. For me, one of the things that made me hesitant about Madison is obviously the location. And the minute you said, oh, no, actually it would change a lot for Madison, I was wondering if it was the same situation I had at UVA or the same situation I had at Virginia Tech, where that location and kind of being far from a lot of things and having a Black community there
for sure
that's a little bit smaller allows us to be, in community more and meaningful. Is that your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does require Black students in particular to be very intentional about finding community on that campus. And I think that they have the faculty supports and the administrative supports in place to support that, which is just as important, to have some of the leadership and the adults on campus who get it and know that is a sacred space and that they need to maintain it.
Okay. So this was your initial bracket.
Yeah.
Out of the 30, I was like, why did I have to count as if this was not at the very top 32? I was like, 1, 2, 3. Are there colleges on this list? And not to say because we all have our own preferences, right? But are there colleges on this list that are a no for you right now?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it shifts a little bit each year. It shifts with any situation that, unfortunately happens. And I think, so what I am in constant conversation with other college counselors and higher ed professionals about is institutional response. And so we know
Right.
that things are going to pop off on campus, right? Like we know young adults are going to do what young adults do.
Right.
And I think that focusing on the institution's response has been really helpful in me gauging what that experience might be like for my Black students in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So that shifts and that changes, right? So like I have Tufts on there a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
because prior to this
Oh.
month, I really
Mm-hmm.
thought that it was a fantastic institution for some of my most high achieving students, where they could find community on campus, where they wouldn't be totally isolated. They're still kind of like at the top of the East Coast. But after the kidnapping of their graduate student
Mm-hmm.
recently, I'm still kind of waiting to see how the institution responds to that and
Mm-hmm.
what position they take up on immigration, on what position they take up on this, our current presidential administration, because I
Mm-hmm.
know that many institutions are trying to play it safe and protect their coins.
Right. Right.
So that'll be interesting for me to, and everyone really, to see and to follow.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, so that I'm kind of keeping tabs on. I generally always keep tabs on Penn, so I'm a Philly native. Um,
I know you have a
Philadelphia through
lot
and
of
through.
opinions on Penn.
I have a lot of
And
opinions about
a lot of,
Penn.
and I'm just gonna say it, a lot of Black counselors. Like if I talk to a Black counselor, it is not unusual for Penn to be like,
Yeah, like I'm really
where are they
careful.
missing the mark in your opinion?
Um, so I think it's funny because one of the first times that I was on campus as a professional, because I've been on campus probably 1,000 times at this point, but as a professional, I can remember walking through campus, getting a vibe of the students and the library and the social spaces, going to and from class. And I remember a friend of mine and I were on that tour, and we kind of gave each other a look. And my friend at the time, still my friend, but at the time that we were on the tour, was a white male, so we don't come from similar, identity backgrounds. We kind of gave each other a look like, so there's like an undercurrent.
Yeah, something's off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that Penn has such a really distinct history in the city. I don't know that they have done the intentional long-term work of really addressing some of the um, injustices over the past, couple centuries that they've been in
Right.
existence.
Right.
And it's noticeable in the decisions that they make on behalf of students. I think I have a pretty good sense of the students that they want. But even from professors that I know who have been there, I've known a number of professors that have worked there. Their experiences are really not.
So I think I start to classify people as do not want to get their hands dirty.
Mhm.
Would you say that's
Don't want to get their hands dirty and are in a position to get
like
their hands dirty and come out of it pretty much unscathed, right?
right? And so it's kind of like when you used to be like, okay, can you drop me off at this place, like at the mall, whatever, and your parents are like, get a ride back, right? And it's
Yes.
like, and you can call them
Yes.
if you need them, but now there's like a barrier of it's on you to get
Right.
yourself back home from this
Right.
place. It
Right.
doesn't mean we don't care, but there's not a level of responsibility. And
Mm.
actually, going back to Tufts for a second, I looked at their response,
Okay.
um, especially from like the eyes of a lawyer. I
Yeah.
was like, okay.
Yeah.
Um, and when we're talking about Tufts, we obviously can't remove Columbia from the equation.
Hmm.
Columbia, I was like, I mean, Columbia essentially got taken over by Trump. So I was like, okay, which
Yeah.
is wild to me, not because it's Columbia, but just because you all have more GDP, more money endowment than some countries having a GDP, and you're folding so quickly.
Folded
so quickly. And
without hesitation, it seemed.
Right. And the thing that disturbed me the most was that the student had asked Columbia for protection and not received that protection. For Tufts, I think they were one of the first to notify and say, hey guys, this is what's going on. We've let them know that if they want external counsel, we will provide it. We're going to keep you posted, which is very safe in lawyer language. And then for me, it comes down to community response at that point, which has been phenomenal. And I think that's been true at Columbia as well. But, you know, when you have multiple people coming out of Columbia saying, you know, when the thing that concerned me was the court case that came up recently where they're like, oh yeah, a judge had to be like, hey, we're not turning over student data. And it's just like, what is happening right now? Are there any other colleges on this list that you had to like knock off? And I'm going to put your updated one on. Colleges that you had to knock off, and it was difficult to knock them off.
It wasn't difficult. The Rice Dartmouth choice wasn't difficult, and Rice is in Texas, so it's like, you know, in terms of.
Can we talk about the Texas of it all? Because a lot of students will be like, not going to Texas. I'm like, Texas has 5 different states in it. And one of the things, you know, because, you know, I drove a student down to Texas. One of the things significantly larger than you think it is. I was like 3 days max, 11 days later. But one of the things that a lot of students have perceptions of Texas, and everybody has a perception of Texas. But I'm like, honestly, I told my student, I was like, you're going to be safer in Texas as an undocumented student than you are in Maryland. And that's just because this is an everyday for them.
So, absolutely.
So what about Rice stands out to you?
I mean, honestly, it was really just who you had in that particular bracket.
Is it Dartmouth? No, I used to have on the sign Dartmouth invented legacy in 1913. I just took it down recently.
And they're still committed to those ideals, whether they say it or not.
I mean, I think it's very telling that the article about going back to tests required had a picture of the president. And I was like, so we couldn't find any students.
Right. And I think that's, for me, I feel like there are certain qualities and characteristics of an institution that I really look for when it gets on my list of institutions that I would even suggest to students, right? So some of these schools, a lot of these schools, I would not suggest to my students. One, because they're just super, super selective, and students kind of already do that, you know, that sort of criteria thing on their own, which, you know, I always advise them against. But for better or worse, you know, students and families really use this process as a litmus test for how special they are, how smart they are, which is ridiculous, and not the point of this. And I know that, you know, our colleagues on both sides of this process fully understand that. But I think that, you know, some of the institutions that I just would never suggest, MIT is included, are institutions that really, on the whatever they present to the public, I think lacks the type of critical analysis that I would expect of those institutions, right? And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a super complex you know, justification of why they're going back to testing or any of those, why they're making the decisions that they make. But it needs to be nuanced and it needs to be honest as much as possible. And I think that when I don't see that, it gives me pause.
Right. I think for me, one of the easiest ones, and you and I were on the same page with this, was Princeton versus Rochester. Now, Rochester almost got knocked down because they waitlisted one of my students. So
Wait a minute.
I was like, well, I guess Princeton's about to win. I was like, nah, come on. But, I think for me, what excites you about Rochester?
Yeah, so I have, I am absolutely biased because,
Right.
I've had family that have attended the institution. But I think when I visited, well, Rochester has the city has such a great history in
Right.
terms of, being a space where Black folks can go and be. I think the institution itself does a really good job of supporting Black students in particular, creating safe spaces for them, brave spaces for them. I think they could probably do a little bit better in terms of guiding their professors in every department
Okay.
to really be better suited to meet the needs of whatever marginalized students that are on campus. They get a ton of kids from New York City.
Okay.
A ton of Black and brown kids from New York City, which
Right.
which I love because they've created those pathways intentionally,
Right.
knowing that they have the financial supports in place, knowing that they have the campus resources in place to give the students what they need. They package students really well, I think. Um,
And can you explain what packaging means
oh
to
yeah, so so in
general
terms
public?
of in terms of affordability.
Right.
So I think that they do a really decent job of taking into account, family finances when creating financial aid packages, offering scholarships and grants. You know, they're a CSS school, so they require additional forms from families to fill out, which a number of these schools do. But I think that it's another headache in the process, which I have had to complete that process before, and it absolutely is a headache.
Right.
But I think that it's worth it in terms of schools being able to make the enrollment more
Yeah.
accessible for students who otherwise wouldn't. I mean, Rochester has got a good amount of coins in their pocket, and they've
Right.
got a pretty robust alumni community. So I think that they are in a position to make it work, and they do.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And I think like for me, if you're using the CSS and CSS is just another form for financial
exactly.
aid, but if you're using the CSS and you're not giving us more money, then we
Exactly.
have a problem. But like
We have a
if
big
you're using
problem.
the CSS and the output is now we're considering more circumstances,
Yes.
then
Yes.
okay.
Exactly.
So on the other side, so we have Rochester Rice,
Yeah.
USC, NYU. I'm gonna go Duke on this one. And I think it's just, we just have different types of students because
Yeah.
mine, suburban kids, and I always tell students, and I remember it was like 3, 4 cycles ago, a student was like, "Hey, I'm just gonna go down to Duke for the weekend." I was like, "It is April 28th." And she's like, "Oh, no. I know where I'm going to college." And I was like, "Do not go down to the research triangle unless you are willing to really." I said, "You're going to
Yeah.
come back from this trip
Right.
and you're going to rethink everything because it's
Yes.
gorgeous.
Yes.
It's enclosed.
Yes.
It feels like, it feels like a college. Duke
Yeah.
feels like a college.
Very different
Staff
schools.
is going to make you fall in love with them. And of course
Yeah.
they did. And she was
Mhm.
like, "I don't know if I want to." I was like, "Oh, okay. See, this is exactly why."
See? Yep. Yeah.
And but I think Duke can compete with some of the higher ups.
Mhm.
But and I was actually, I think this was last year. Yeah, it was last year when they dropped the scholarship. I had a conversation with
Mhm.
Duke about dropping the scholarship, and they're like, "Listen, we didn't decide that," which is always interesting because you think that admissions has more power than they do.
I know.
But when I had that conversation, I felt like I was, and I think you talked about this earlier, I didn't feel like there was a withholding of information. It was
Nice.
more like, this is how it is. This
Nice.
is what we're doing.
Right.
This is like, it sucks, but this is how
Yeah.
we're
Right.
maintaining our commitment. Right.
Right.
And if somebody can walk me through
I
it,
appreciate that
I can
for sure.
appreciate that. And if I can give feedback like, "Hey, I'm noticing that you're committing a lot of legacies over Black students who are more qualified than them," and they're willing to receive that feedback and
Mm.
get that feedback and take it, that's fine.
Mhm.
But NYU, I mean, the one thing I always say It's like NYU is like, do you have McDonald's money?
Right. Right.
Because it's not, NYU is not just tuition.
No.
It is the expenses.
Yeah.
That will,
yeah.
I was like, listen, for me, I like to eat out on a daily.
Same. Girl, same.
Right. If I'm at NYU, I'm not going to money.
It's so unreasonably expensive.
You already said MIT's a no for you, so Florida.
Absolutely not.
But I feel like MIT in Florida, I was like, I mean,
I know. That was,
I was like, okay, we'll move Florida, but like moving out on the next round.
Yes.
Berkeley, Vanderbilt, anything in particular about Berkeley, because they moved to your Final Four?
I think it's the students who are on campus that really drive that decision for me. Not necessarily the institute. I mean, I think the institution does a fine job. It's the students who are there who I'm like, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be great. You'll thrive. Huh?
You'll be protected.
You'll be protected. You will be protected. And that's huge for me, that I don't think that they would have that at Vanderbilt.
Right.
I like Vandy, but yeah.
You know, for me, Vandy, when I went, the vibes, it was the one college on the Texas tour that I was like, yeah, I don't need to see more. It was, and it was just the gate. For me, it came down to the gate. I was like,
yeah,
the fact that you're gating yourself from this community that you're embedded in,
right,
it's just giving the wrong vibes for me. And I know a lot of students who love Vanderbilt. Like you have Northwestern and UVA. Obviously, I'm going to go with UVA, not because I'm an alumni, but just because my students are always going to pick UVA. Also, fun fact, my mother actually went to Northwestern during segregation and couldn't find housing, but Northwestern did provide her with housing. So fair.
Yeah.
Madison's up here. And then I'm going to actually start on the left side. So you pick USC and USC ends up being your winner. And USC even staged your winner after Madison came in.
Yeah.
What is it? I know why I love USC.
Okay.
But what is it, especially in light of USC can be seen and can uphold a rich kids complex.
For sure.
Right?
For sure. For sure.
And USC is I feel like USC is like an influencer's dream. Yes. It's so scenic. I'm like, there's like 50 campuses on this one campus alone.
Yes.
Different scenery at each one.
Oh yeah, photo ops all over the place.
But like also, I remember asking, I think it was Paul at USC for Viterbi. I was like, why do you guys all have your own lab? And he was like, why not have our own lab? And I was like, he's like, why would we want to share with 50 other schools? Like, we want our students to have success. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just poor.
That part.
But I think they do package well. They package well.
They do.
Sure.
They
but
do.
What is it about USC that stands out for you? And what makes it stand out over Berkeley?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like ultimately in my experience with my students, they've just been more accessible throughout the process. And I mean everything from contacting the admissions office or students on campus before even applying.
Right.
And this is
and reaching out. That's the thing that, like, the number of kids that I get who are like, I just got a letter from USC asking me to consider applying. And I'm like,
yes.
Okay.
Right, exactly. And not like on some fluffy kind of stuff, right? Like
let's define the fluffy.
Yeah.
So reaching out with a pretext so that we can reject you later to increase our acceptance rate.
Right, exactly. And I don't feel like it's that.
Northwestern, we're going to work on that.
Yeah, we're going to get better at trying to become more selective. So yeah, I mean, I think they are intentional about really wanting students on campus who, um, are certainly able to do the work and able to handle, college level critical thinking and doing and all of those sorts of things, but also students who would really benefit from being in that type of environment.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, this is years and years and years across different school
Right.
environments that I
Right.
have seen this consistency.
For me, one of the things that defines a good college, and this is why I do love USC. Well, first of all, Sasha Obama finished at USC after going to
I
Michigan.
mean, there
So
you
that
go.
was enough for me.
There
Like,
you go. Say
close
less.
the
Say less.
book. I'm like, you have Sweetie and you have Sasha Obama and done, right?
Yes.
I think one of the things that's really interesting is I had a student go in thinking dentistry. Now, in my mind, I don't know about you. I hate when students fixate on a major
Yeah,
and
me too.
like start ignoring options. And I'm like,
It's same.
you're not going to finish in that major, not because you're not competent, but because just because, right?
Yeah.
But also, how flexible is a college once you start making real decisions? And I had a student start in dentistry. She's ending in game design. And I'm like, only at USC would that
Yes.
be, would they see that talent, nurture that talent, and make her feel safe enough to move over to the new program
Right.
and still be on track for graduation? Because a lot of y'all will
Yes.
start adding years at that
It's
point.
real. It's real.
And when we asked for more financial aid, the appeal process was very easy for us.
Mhm.
I thought it was actually very thoughtful in terms of the
Mm.
questions that they were asking.
Mhm.
So, but USC is just, I can see why people bribe their way.
They used to. They used to.
I'm like, I feel like when I was reading Melissa Corn's book on this, it was just like USC was just happy to be there, and they're like, yes, okay, no, like we don't want bribery,
No, please don't do that.
But even as I was listening to it, I was like, I think we're all overestimating for the feds how connected admissions was within this process. I can see how somebody could exploit a loophole to get there.
Yeah.
And I can see how it would piss off everybody in the admissions department
Absolutely.
who's been working really, really hard.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, but USC is just a flexible campus. It's just, and there's 50 different campuses on there. Oh, you're not going to be bored. And there's even though I'm not shopping at Target right now, there's a Target on campus. It's like, this is its own ecosystem.
It is. It is. And it seems like a fairly healthy ecosystem. And that I was just there when we had NACAC last year, and I was able to visit some students who were there. Two pretty different students, and they were both thriving in ways that they might not necessarily thrive at another institution. And they can be in LA is incredible. It's an incredible city,
right?
So I think you can just get so much of everything.
I'm going to say this as a suburbanite who does not like cities. USC is its own ecosystem.
It is, and you can stay on campus.
And I feel like one of the things that students will say, and I think this is my bias came in towards Wisconsin-Madison because it's in Wisconsin. Is that sometimes you think, okay, this location is not going to work out for me. I don't like LA, or I don't like Madison, or I don't like Tennessee. And I'm like, you need to visit after being admitted. Please stop visiting before.
Just wait till you get in.
Let me tell. If you are planning a spring break trip right now to go visit colleges, don't. The number of students I have right now who have a list of colleges that they visited and were rejected from is a wasted expense.
Don't book that flight.
For me, I'm like, take take them to a Duke game and be like, do you like it here?
Local schools. You can get a sense, right?
Like, be like, oh, you know what? We're going to go to a lecture at this, at this college.
Exactly.
And then there's 300 people. Do you like that experience? Did you not like that experience?
Exactly.
My biggest question for students is like, who do you turn to when you have a question? Do you turn to ChatGPT, AI, or do you go to your teacher and ask a question? Because if you ask a question,
right,
then we need a smaller environment, right? But USC has a balance of that.
Yes.
UCSD, close to my heart. I love San Diego.
San Diego is amazing. Perfect. I love San Diego.
But I love their campus, beautiful campus.
Yep.
It's not hard for me with Harvard being there. I'm like,
not at all.
Not at all. All the way.
And I feel like people would be surprised. People might be surprised by that, but it's taking into account fit. It's taking into account environment. It's taking into account who's on campus and why and doing what,
right?
And what's surrounding the campus. It's all of these things that we're thinking about, and past student experiences.
I mean, it's a lot. Experiences. Yeah. I think a lot of people go into Harvard with the idea of like, I'm finally going to get into the network. And I'm like, if you have an introverted kid who does not like to put themselves out there, or you have a kid that's going to have to work on campus.
Yeah.
Oh, for a second. You have a student that has to work on campus. They're not accessing the network. And I think people are not understanding how deep these networks are. These people, they might not have gone to school together, but they're like, oh, you summer in this, I summer in this.
Exactly.
You do this,
Exactly. What does that actually look like?
Insider culture.
Yeah.
And I remember I was talking to somebody about the Chetty Social Mobility Index. And it's like, well, how do you argue against Harvard produces some of the best mobility index? And I'm like, I look at the therapy bills. If I'm making, $100,000 more, but I'm having 10 years of therapy, it's not necessarily a good trade-off. So one of the things that I always try to do, especially after I had not a bad Harvard fit, but I had a pretty rocky Harvard fit, is be more intentional about, is this the type of school for my student? I remember I was walking through, I'm like, I know it's here. I was walking through Roanoke College, and which is one of my favorites. And they're like, do you like it here? Do you like it here? I was like, I don't have to like it here. I need to know what type of student likes it here.
Exactly.
When I was talking to Duke, I was like, you need Stanley Cup. And he's like, you mean like the hockey? I was like, no, like you need Stanley Cup girls. I was like, silk press. You're gonna need a silk press. Maybe natural, but very structured natural.
So specific, Jen. I love it.
I was like, I don't think you're getting like you might have some lace fronts, but you're not getting a lot of lace fronts.
Right.
I do.
I so completely understand exactly what you mean.
I'm like, okay, I was like, the problem that you're having is you're recruiting, you're recruiting these students who are like natural hair girlies in their natural hair era. And they're not compatible with your silk press
They have not created a space for all those girlies. They have not.
Like, yes, Black lives, all of our lives matter.
Yes.
But it's about telling Black students like, hey girl, over here we do relaxers still.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? Not for me.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the thing.
Hey girl, but you know what? At Duke, you're getting dressed every day.
Yes.
You're not wearing pajamas to class.
Exactly.
You can, but you're going to feel out of place.
And that's, I think, a reflection of institutions not knowing Black people well enough to know the diversity within our
Right.
communities.
Right.
And that there are different spaces where different folks are going to feel most comfortable and most nourished.
Right.
And it's not that, you admit a particular student from a particular background and make all these assumptions about
Right.
what their experience is going to be because you
Right.
don't know this community as well as you
Right.
really should. Yeah.
Right. I always think first and foremost, I go, new Fresh Prince or old Fresh Prince, right? Because I'm like, new Carlton and old Carlton are very different Carltons.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, like I could see an Ashley Banks
Yes.
on USC
Yes.
for both, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
I can't see Carlton too on, Tufts campus, right?
No.
So what's special about Tufts? We know we talked about it, but what are some outcomes that you like that Tufts produces?
Yeah. So I do think that I would have pretty serious conversations with Black students in particular around most of these schools.
Right.
Certainly Tufts, in their community. I think that the intention and the desire to do right is there at every level.
I love that you said that.
Yeah, I do.
I'm like, clip that. That's a moment. I feel like, my mom always says this, and I'm hesitant to put it out in the world because I'm like, such a sacred thing that she says. But she's always like, you're not always going to make the right decision, but can you make the decision right?
Yes.
And I feel like with Tufts, they don't always make the right decision. They are part of, the system.
Correct.
But there's a willingness to make it right and apologize and not gaslight.
Yes.
You were thinking like, hey, well, there was nothing we can do. Our graduate students.
Exactly.
The fact that they were willing to say, hey, we don't care if that it was like 3 blocks from campus.
Right.
It's still Tufts for us.
Yes.
And we're looking into this and we're doing everything that we can. And it was just like, it's not that I think that Tufts is going to squabble up.
Right. Right.
But I think it's like you do look back and you're like, oh, Tufts is there. Okay. All right. Okay.
Exactly.
Pleasantly surprised, but also not surprised. And I think that's one of the key elements of a good college for me is when I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised that they're behind you.
Yeah.
They want their culture. Now, I feel like your City Girl came out with Santa Barbara. Okay. Versus UCLA, but
that's my bias.
Why not Stanford? Because Issa Rae came from Stanford.
I love me some Issa Rae.
Let me tell you something.
Yes.
And Rachel Maddow came from Stanford. So I'm like,
I do like, this was tough. I do like Stanford.
I like
think
it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think again, it's that accessibility part for me. Like
it's the beach for me.
Ooh, beach too. Yes.
I'm like, it's Santa Barbara for me.
Yes. So
they are accessible, but I'm like, the beach is like cherry on top.
Cherry on top for real. I just think
not enough students are looking through the full UCs.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either.
Like, I wish UC, and I know that they're not going to, but I wish they would come out with personas to say, this is the type of student that we are looking for.
I would love that.
I would love for them to classify every, Fresh Prince character.
Yeah, that would be, maybe that's our next creative project.
Let's do it. Because it's like,
I'm down.
UCSB is gorgeous campus, but also I love, and this is the same thing as UTSA, I love when you're part of a bigger system.
Yeah.
You have access to the whole system.
Yes.
But then you have specialized knowledges in smaller campuses.
Yes.
ugh.
It's great. That's
I mean,
magic. Magic can be made.
listen, it's going to be hard. If you put a UC up against a Claremont, it's going to be a difficult choice for me.
Okay.
But
That's real.
but there's benefits to both.
For sure.
But then you chose UCLA because City Girls.
I mean, I think you called it out exactly as it is. Like, I have a bias for the city. I mean, I have only lived in cities, Philly,
Right.
DC, Pittsburgh, even though
Right.
Pittsburgh is like a baby city.
Yeah.
My preference, and my students are coming from the city too, right? My
Right.
past students are coming from DC, my past students are coming from Philly. So it's just having all the things everywhere around them and still being able to have an aesthetically pleasing, lovely campus that's spread all out, that's hilly, that's a little bit of an adventure. You got your skateboard, which so many people do. So yeah, that was my bias.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
For me, I went Michigan when I was doing versus Brown.
Okay.
I didn't go Brown. And again, for me, sometimes it comes down to Sasha Obama lived there.
And listen, Jen, that's enough.
I'm like, if it's good enough for Sasha,
that's real.
If they're going to send their whole baby there.
Yes.
Their main character of the family.
I know.
She's so grown. But
love her.
Why Brown over Michigan for you?
So this was a couple things. One, I feel like I pretty much know exactly the type of student that Brown is looking for.
Okay, tell me.
I know the student that they want on their campus.
Tell me. I want to hear it.
So
I could talk to you all day. I'm like, tell me more. I'll just move into your house. We'll do this.
Yes. Because I feel like
so the Brown archetype is,
of course, super high achieving, like does all of the content areas phenomenally well and almost effortless.
So well-rounded.
Yeah.
Doesn't struggle with the core subjects.
Does not. And is a student who is creative, artistic in any kind of way, pretty sure of who they are, like grounded in who they are as a person, even if they have tons of questions about the world.
Right. And I think the questions for me is what I'm looking for in a Brown applicant. They have to be asking 50,000 questions.
50,000 really thoughtful
and you're just like, can we move on?
Yes.
Dog with a bone is how I would describe a Brown.
Yes. Yeah. And whereas I have an idea of what Michigan wants. Michigan doesn't provide the kind of financial support.
I don't. Well, in state, but out of state now. But
yeah,
I don't know if I do because Michigan keeps shifting so much, and I don't know if Michigan knows what.
That's such a really good point.
I don't, and it's not that I don't think they have direction. I think Michigan's one of those campuses that's evolving so much so quickly. And has been put into the national spotlight so quickly.
For sure.
And you have a lot of students just going there all of a sudden that they're still figuring it out and settling. I don't know if I know what a Michigan. I know what a Brown student looks like.
Yes.
Michigan students can come in different forms.
I think so too.
And
I don't know that that's intentional though.
Right. And I don't think it's intentional. I don't know if sometimes it's a bad thing because you're like, as a counselor, it's hard to say, is this a Michigan app? Because when I saw Caltech was on the other side, and for the last one, you moved Caltech, and then we moved Madison and Caltech got knocked off. But there's a very distinctive feeling that I get.
Absolutely.
When I'm reading somebody's application and I'm like, this is a Caltech app.
Yes.
It's a bunch of questions. It's open exploration. And I think Brown and Caltech actually share a lot of similar qualities, but Brown presents itself like you could do anything while you're here. And I'm like, don't believe the lie. Like, you don't have to take curriculum. We don't do that. And I'm like Brown is your friend that you're like, they're like, I'm supportive of all types of people. And you're like, they're like,
what does that mean?
And we don't judge. And I'm like, honey,
yes, that is Brown.
You are full of it. You judge all the time. But I like Brown's culture. I like Michigan's culture.
Yeah.
Listen, the one thing I tell people is like, don't be afraid of climate, because I know a lot of students will be like, well, I've always been warm. I've always been cold.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, Rochester's bring a coat.
For sure. It's going to snow, and it's going to snow.
Michigan, bring a coat.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But, and pack that into your expenses. One of the things that we'll do when we're deciding is like, are you going to need a new wardrobe? Are you going to need a new coat? Is there a coat fund? Like I know Williams has a coat fund. Like they will help you transition.
Yes.
Right? But it's like, and are you ready for this new environment?
Yeah.
And then Wake Forest, I feel like Wake Forest Penn, I feel like I did cheat for Wake Forest, and I'm not apologetic about it.
Jen.
I did.
Yeah.
It was my bracket, so I decided. I was like, where is Wake Forest? Oh, Penn. Got it. Done. That will kick it into at least Elite Eight.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We
Wake Forest is a
appreciate
special institution. Is there anything that you like in particular about Wake Forest?
I just think they do right by students throughout, from the beginning to the midst of the process. Have a few students there, thriving Black students, just doing what they came to do and getting the support and the resources to do it. So I think they do a good job.
I feel like they do a good job nurturing, and although they have some pockets of kids that are just problematic,
of course,
some of the smartest people I've met have gone to Wake Forest, and they're very versatile. Like they think on their feet. So then we had Tufts, Wake Forest, and obviously I feel like if you look at this from a rankings perspective, it's like, oh well, obviously Harvard, but I'm like, obviously Wake Forest is going to win this.
Yes,
it's just obvious.
Yes.
So when you put up Wake Forest against USC, what was the factor that won out?
So I think my urban bias. I think all of the resources that students have access to, the school spirit is unmatched.
Alumni network is
it's
cult.
Yes.
Cult level.
Yes.
And I tell students all the time, as somebody who went to a football school, the thing about a football school or a basketball school or any kind of school is that you have more opportunities to connect with your network, and you don't realize it until you're off campus and you're coming back all the time.
Yep. Exactly. And it makes it stand out in pretty much every category for me. Now, I truly appreciate and love what Wake Forest does.
I feel like you have an East Coast versus West Coast. So like you have two options.
I know.
Yeah. I love
it. It was a great list. It was a great list.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, who are some people who are not on US rankings, US News? I couldn't even think of their name.
That's how irrelevant they should be.
I don't care about that. So, but US News, who's not on US News radar that you love? So like for me, I have my Roanoke's, my Hollins, I have, oh my God, my Virginia State. I wasn't even going to touch an HBCU bracket because I was like, I'm going to be picking Virginia State and everybody's going to be mad. And I'm like, and I don't care. And I don't care.
As you should.
And I don't care. It's Virginia State for me. And I don't care. And I don't care. Especially as I have a lot of people in my community from Norfolk. They'll be like, but Jennifer, and I don't care. But who's not on US News in World Report Radar that you love for your students? Give me like a couple.
Yeah. So I also, full transparency, I don't know who is on that list. I don't. Like, I don't like who. Sorry to this man. Sorry to this man. I don't know him.
I love the reference. Like, sometimes a student will be like, I want to go to Harvard. I'll be like, is that a new?
I think I've heard of it. Not quite sure. That's in like Arizona, right?
It's like,
don't know her.
I definitely don't know her.
Yeah.
Especially, and keep your eye out. One of the things I've been telling the students, keep your eye out, because they just got the same thing that Columbia got, threatening their funding. And I'm like, Harvard has the resources to stand up. So
yes,
girl.
Yes.
I don't know why all of you all didn't just, form a little Voltron.
Form the Voltron. Get on a little chat.
So you came for Columbia, and we just want to let you know.
Exactly.
All of us are going to be piling on. So
exactly.
Trying, because, especially as somebody who used to be in law, you see Skadden ARPS folding, and you see Wilma Harrell, and my mom was like, we were watching the news, and I was like, that's Skadden. I already, don't even tell me who folded. I already know. It's Skadden. It's Skadden.
Right.
But who are some people on your list that, well, you don't know the other list. You don't know.
Right.
So who are some people on your list that you're loving this year? Is there, because I feel like this happens to me where I get a fixation on a particular college, and I'm like, I want a kid at that college this year.
Yeah.
And last year it was Hollins. I mean, Hollins is still one of my top, but what colleges catch your eye? Like, who's a good suitor for you?
Yeah. So I think I really like who do I like this year that has been doing a good job? I like Maryland schools actually. I actually like. So I didn't have a fondness for University of Maryland College Park when I lived in the DMV.
Right.
I appreciate it a little bit more now. I also, for years and years, I loved UMBC. So University of Maryland, Baltimore County, super great institution. I think they really do right by students. So Maryland is a good area, I think for students. I would say I think Binghamton does a pretty good job. I think they're pretty good. I actually like Marquette. I visited years ago. Had a couple students attend. Yeah, and I think that they, the Midwest is a tricky space.
But I feel like the Midwest schools, the Black students at Midwest schools, like unmatched.
Yeah.
It's like once you're here, you're family.
Yes.
Yes.
Sticking together, which I really appreciated. I would say those are some schools that fly under the radar that students don't initially know about. That I often might suggest.
And when people are picking, what are the things that because I know we're running out of time, but what are the things that you direct them to? Like right now, I'm like, search the school name in Trump, look at the list of 60 colleges that are being targeted, and decide if you want to be on a campus that's being targeted. For me, I know George Mason's on that list. I'm like, I'm not concerned about George Mason at all. George Mason is not folding anytime soon. So good luck with that. But what are the things that you direct students to look at? And I know I say, talk to as many Black students as possible.
Yes, absolutely. Talk to as many Black students as you possibly can and really get an honest feedback about their experience and how the university, the institution responds to them, treats them, handles their concerns, handles their families, all of the above.
Right. Is there any other sources that you have students turn to or you turn to figure out what's going on the campus?
Black faculty.
Oh,
If there are any. If there are any. Yeah. Look through the departments. And look at some pictures.
That's the thing, though. I feel like sometimes you don't know, as somebody who went to Virginia Tech with a pretty white faculty.
For sure.
It was like, but the three we had,
right,
heavy hitters, right? Yes. Like we had Nikki Giovanni. You're not playing with us. Like, you're not playing with us. No. Like, what are you talking about?
Right, exactly.
It's not just a matter. And I tell my students, go sit down in your department, talk to your advisor, see if it's a comfortable fit, right? Like, don't make assumptions. Because I had a student that was like, okay, I'm going to go to this college. And I was like, yeah. And we had discussed this college and I had hyped this college up. But then I was like, you know what? Maybe go see Rhodes before you make a decision.
Love Rhodes. Love Rhodes.
Love Rhodes. What's the other one that's on the other side of Tennessee? Not Rhodes. Sewanee.
Oh, Sewanee. And I haven't visited. I've been meaning to get down there. I really want to visit.
I know we're out of time, but I'm going to tell you the story. We go to Sewanee after we go to Rhodes, and we had a bad visit that day at Rhodes, and I was considering not sending another student to Rhodes. Like, that's how bad the visit was.
Oh,
and
wow.
then the next year, I was like, actually, no. And they redeemed themselves in the next year in a big, big way.
Good.
And because like Rhodes is such a beautiful campus, but also really great for pre-med and pre-law.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to law school or pre-med if you're going to Rhodes.
Absolutely.
Like you're not giving up on that dream. They're not going to let you.
Right.
And faculty support is great. But we go to Sewanee on the way back, and it was like, you know, as a Black person, I don't realize like how much tension I'm holding. I walk in, Black kid, and it's a random day in the summer. And he's like, yeah, I just love it here. And I started looking around. I was like, these are like graduate level posters that they have just here for undergrads. He's like, this is the perfect place. It's a perfect fit. I feel like I could thrive here. He was just so, I would say he was an embodiment of Black boy joy.
It's beautiful.
And then we went to the dining hall because I wanted to see it. And I was like, oh, hey, we're just here. Like, you know, just to look, we're not going to be eating anything. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we're not stealing. And she was like, well, baby, if you're hungry.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God. But it was also like when I stepped on a crosswalk, cars didn't just try to run me over. That like people were so freaking helpful. And I remember we went to the big cross because they have a big cross. And this girl was like, oh, she's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to go to Rhodes because my students was like, well, we had a bad visit. She's like, do you want me to help you try to get into Sewanee? I was like, are you in their admissions office? She's like, no, I'm just an alumni.
Nice.
And so she's like, no, I'm going to go to Roanoke College. And she goes, well, just remember, your name is Star Angel. So you are already a star. And I was like, what is happening on Sewanee's campus?
I love that.
It's very cozy. Yeah. Like I would say Sewanee and Rhodes. Rhodes is like an espresso. Sewanee is like something that you drink slow, like a matcha. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I love these analogies. They like are helping to conceptualize the whole experience.
I always try to figure out, I'm like, it's like, I'm always like, this is the Lunchable campus.
More on that later. More on that next time.
Okay. So if people want to follow up with you, keep following you. Where do they follow you?
Yeah. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. Just search my name.
I've been really leaning into LinkedIn recently.
Yeah. It's fun. It can be a good time.
No chaos.
Yes. Exactly.
I mean, there is chaos, but.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah,
well, I love talking to you. I'm going to end the stream and then say goodbye to you. But thank you so much for going through everything. We're definitely going to do the Fresh Prince thing for sure.
Okay, that sounds fun. Okay.
All right.